Hello, I want to teach you how to create a border using a journal stencil template and basically dot pens, and this is much easier than it sounds. So I'm using the summertime journal template, as you can see here, to create my border because it is a couple of photos on the beach. And I've already pre-set up my page where it's almost all finished bar the border, which is going to go down the bottom here. And I use the summertime paper pack to do that. So what we will need to do is look at our template and work out what sort of border you need to produce, what you want in that border. Now, I went ahead beforehand and created, just out of some foolscap paper, some templates of ideas that I might like to use and to try to work out what I wanted in my border. And I've ended up choosing this as is what I'm going to create. So the things you will need to create this is you will need a journal template with the ability to stencil. So it needs to have some, pictures as well as your journal portions on it as well. You can see that this is really great for beach or summertime style of layout and photos. Now, the other things you will need is you'll need a selection of dot pens. Now, what a dot pen is it has a really large, thick end. Oh, get that off for you. So you can see that it produces a lot of ink from that end. So you will need a selection of, different color dot pens. And on top of that, you will need just a little plastic mat. On top of that, you need some little daubers or sponges. You could use paintbrushes, but I find these are the easiest. And a small spray bottle of water to use with your inks so that they won't dry out too quickly with your pens, your dot pens. As I said, I pre-did some on some foolscap paper first to work out how I wanted my stencil to look. So this is now going to be my guide, and I have already started it for you. So this is what. Now, to create our stencil border, I've cut a piece of white cardstock 2.5 inches wide by 12 inches long, and I've chosen what I wanted to put on my stencil, and this was pretty much my template. As you can see, it gives me a rough idea of what colours and what I'm going to use. So what I will need to do is work out where I want the placement. Now, I've decided I'm going to have starfish and this moving water part. So there's my starfish and there's my moving water part. And all I did was I started out working out exactly where I wanted the starfish using my yellow dot pen and the fine end. I marked that out first, flipped my template and did the other side. So I did that before the water. So you can see that's all marked out. The next step is to get this moving water pattern done. And I totally used the dot pen. So I lined up exactly where I wanted it to go, outlined it with the fine tip of my dot pen, getting the complete outline. Once I outlined it, making sure I was not going to take my pen across the starfish, so it had to go around it. And then once I did that, keeping the stencil in place, I then used the dot end, the thick end of my dot pen to fill that in, because it's such a small space. It's, you know, I think it works best using that. So the next part I went to do was to fill in the colour in the yellow and the starfish. So I've done one side and I'm going to show you how to do the other. Now you need to use your mat, your plastic mat, and your dot pen, and you don't want it too wet either. So just some ink, and I think, you know, if you use your spray bottle and spray it at a bit of a distance away, so you won't see what I'm doing here. I'll move that out the road. Just spray it at a bit of a distance so you don't get too much water. You don't want it too wet. So the next part, once you've prepared that, we're going to pop back down our border, making sure we don't get it wet, because you definitely have to be careful with where your ink is. Pop my stencil back down, and you've already outlined it so you can see exactly where it needs to go. And using one of these little daubers, you could use a makeup sponge or anything that will transfer a bit of this ink onto the template. And it's just a matter of sponging it. Makeup sponges are cheap, and you can get them from the cheapy stores. But some cheap stores or craft stores will sell these little daubers, and they tend to be a good size. And just keep going until you get the colour of intensity that you really like. I wanted my starfish quite yellow, but you might want yours to be a lighter colour, so then you would only dab it lightly. Like I say, I think the key is to make sure you don't get a little bit of moisture from the water, but not too much. Let's see how that's going. I think that's nearly ready to finish. Now you can clean your stencil when you're finished with an alcohol wipe, or I like to use alcohol cleaning spray. A bit of alcohol cleaning spray seems to work well. Spray that away. And just clean it off before you're ready to start your next part. Clean all your surfaces. So you can see we now have starfish both sides. If you wished, you could outline your starfish. Just getting that all cleaned up before we move on, because I want to use this great turtle, or tortoise it might be. In the center, so we'll let that dry for a couple of seconds. Right, so I'm going to pop the tortoise in the center, and we're going to color it the same way. And as you can see, journal templates are not just for journaling. You can do such great things with them. And I think I'm going to outline it with a fine tip brown and just sponge the center part, because I'm feeling like these small spots are going to be too hard to sponge. It seems to work well with larger areas. Let's see all outlined. And then using the thick end of my dot pen, I'm going to do exactly what I had done with the starfish. In the center larger parts. Right, that's outlined with our fine end. And then if we go through, just use the dot pen. To do these smaller areas. And I know at the moment it looks very messy because it's on the outside of the stencil, but once I take that away you'll see. Okay, now we're going to do exactly the same thing we did with the yellow dot pen. Draw some brown. Take our spray. I'm going to spray that away from it so that we don't get it too wet. You definitely don't want it too moist. Take away that extra water. And we will do the center. Now I think I could probably almost give it a speckly effect, like a tortoise shell. So I think I won't do it quite so heavily. And now we're left to, I think that's going to be quite good actually. I've already outlined it. And then the last part we'll be doing his head and flippers. Just clean my little plastic mat off. I think I'd like to do it in a green. So let's get the outline happening first. I think the green is going to look fabulous on this layout. Oops. Right, now because we only have a dark green dot pen, I'm going to try doing it with just one of the Creative Memories pens, and hopefully this technique will work. The thick end is not quite as thick as the dot pens are, so it may be a little bit more trickier, but we'll give it a go. sprayed with some water. And get my dauber happening. And let's see what we can do. And it will work. I just need to probably re-ink my clear matte several times. It's coming together quite nicely. A bit more ink. Tiny spray of water. Right. And you definitely need the water to make the pen ink move. Okay, I think hopefully that's going to look fantastic. And we lift our stencil away. Ta-da! I think he looks fantastic. So now we're ready to finish it off, and because it's in the water I thought I might use a different colour blue dot pen just to add some dots to it so it looks like the tortoise and the starfish are in the water and have that movement happening. So if we take a lighter colour dot pen and just add random dots. Now you can push harder and make them smaller and larger, and just random, and I think this kind of finishes it really quite nicely. I really like these dot pens. There's so much you can do, especially with templates or just in your journaling, making journaling boxes. There's so much you can do. They are fantastic. I think that's nearly enough. I'm pretty happy with that. And once we'll let that dry for a couple of seconds. Now we're going to add that to the layout once it's dried. And this bottom border piece here, so this was a 4-inch wide piece of designer paper, which I actually put over the base of this paper, because this from the summertime pack is like they call it a Faster Fabulous, and it has different patterns, and the bottom part of it I didn't like the colour of it, so I've added this, and this is one of our laser cut strips, and they come in different colours, so I could have used either colour, and I've cut it in half and separated it so that once our strip goes over the top, it is going to look fantastic. So just let that dry for a couple of seconds longer. I might start putting down some tape runner. We might add just a tiny bit of repositionable to the end so it all sticks quite nicely. Now let's add here our stenciled border. Making sure it adds quite a unique finish really to your layout. Making sure that that's nice and even. And there's my OCD coming out. Okay, I also thought I would add, to finish this layout off, just a couple of great length sticker strips to the bottom here. Hopefully that doesn't cover my tortoise too much. And one to the top there. And I think that will finish it quite nicely. Beach Please is absolutely perfect. And that's how you create a stenciled border for your layouts. Thank you.